Celebrate a win. Celebrate a choice. Get excited about it. There's no reason not to. The smallest choice, the smallest, feeling, wow, I did this differently today, or I did this for myself today, or I made a choice to help someone today, a kindness choice, where I thought, or where I felt from my heart. Shall we do a welcome?
I think we should do a welcome.
We shall do a welcome. Welcome to Be Insanely Great, the big search for happiness and all of its synonyms. Any feeling that exists that, you could experience in happiness, as well as many other things, such as peace of mind, freedom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My name is Joe, and our co-host, Riley.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Amazing. Thank you for asking. Oh, man, another beautiful day here in sunny South Florida. The butterflies are fluttering, the birds are chirping, the squirrels are munching, and the flowers are blooming.
You by far have the best video podcast background of any video podcaster going at the moment. It's incredible, and people are going to think, like, is he on one of the screens that they use for The Mandalorian? But it's not. It's real, and this is just your backyard that you go and sit in. And we're prepping for winter up here in Canada because it's September 6th. And I get to jump on a call every week with Joe where it's gorgeous and balmy, and we've gotten through the hottest part of summer. I'm hoping for you guys down there.
Yes, funny enough, and this is like the earliest I feel like it's ever occurred in which the humidity dropped from 150% to a more manageable, like 60 to 70% on most of the days, with some very beautiful breezes. So yeah, it's been a quite gorgeous week, and hoping this is the start of a beautiful fall in which the humidification is at a beautiful level. Oh man. So what are we talking about today, Riley?
Well, I think first of all, we should recognize that this is actually going to come out midway through our Big Kindness Challenge.
Yes. Big Kindness Challenge. Thank you. By the time this is released, it is already live. We're in the middle of the Big Kindness Challenge. Hopefully those of you that are participating are experiencing beautiful moments of love and peace and serenity and joy, and maybe feeling more frequently some of the feelings that sometimes you don't really pay attention to until you are kind of called out to them to take, hey, look at this, but yeah, super excited about that, and so grateful to everybody that's embraced it and has decided to commit and try it out and see what happens. And even if it's only in your own world, and that's what the purpose of it is, right? Everybody makes their own choices, everybody's on their own path, everybody's doing their own thing, and everybody's in their own world. And so that's the location, that's where it is, it's in your own world. And I think that, again, this is just, why not? There's no reason not to. It has no opposing or discordant effects. Like, it's all should be a catalyst for hopeful harmony in your life, and many more moments of joy and feeling with your heart and feeling that, right? Because I think a lot of us get caught up in our intellect and like, where does, like, we get centered on that, but then the reality is like, what's beating our life is the energy that's in our heartbeat, right? And so what if we focused on that and allowed that to be the center in which we felt, and then made choices, thinking, feeling, and acting from our heart? And so here we are. We're in the Big Kindness Challenge. And so thank you.
For one, I've been doing this since our last recording session, which I guess at this point has been 2 weeks ago, and just making 5 minutes a day for myself to just sort of sit and pause, concentrate on my breath. And the thing that amazed me most about this was not how silly I thought I was going to feel when I started doing this, but just how much I realized, holy smokes, I'm not making any time for myself throughout the day ever. This is the first time in a while, in a long while, where that has happened. And it's just like, now I try to sneak it in whenever I can. I'm going to start, well, we've got a reading series today that is, talks about how, you should aim for 12 minutes at the very least. But holy smokes, like it was just a whole new realization of, you can get into a rhythm where you're not checking in on yourself. You're not really looking to make sure that you are functioning on all sorts of levels. If you get really caught up in, we just did a big sprint at my little podcast editing company that we're just sort of coming out of, and holy smokes, like there's so many other things. There's so many things that you realize you can put on the back burner, but you can't for too long, or else you start burning out. And so those 5 minutes a day, it's been revelatory in so many different ways.
It starts to swing momentum in your direction. Energy, a function of energy is momentum. Whoa, that was a squirrel having you'll see.
Oh, we can see him.
Yeah, he was deciding to, run, with the momentum that we usually are racing, as we are in the human race, always racing towards something, and not slowing down for ourselves. And, thanks for sharing that, Riley. It's really kind of, again, just one of those points in which, if the energy of our life is electric, and that is energy, and momentum is a big thing. Whenever you're watching, God, a beautiful giant swallowtail butterfly is literally right here. Anytime I was watching the tennis match last night with the U.S. Open, and they talk about momentum all the time. When you're watching a football game and talk about momentum, right? Every event in which there's it's all about momentum, right? That's one of the things well, what about momentum in your life? What about momentum in your life and the things that, and, I've realized that it's such a deep level, and I'm so grateful to have reflected to come to the point of that realization. But prior to that, I hadn't made time for myself, and I hadn't made those choices, right? And it's all a series of small choices. It's all a series of, thoughts, feelings, and actions. But the reality is, you have to take action before you can start focusing on feeling, and then potentially get to a place in which the thoughts you create from the feelings you have are the ones you want instead of the ones you don't want. Right. And so that's, at least through my own experience, what's been so helpful. And one of the things, and I did want to say one thing, kind of supporting our last episode, in which we talked about the 7 myths of meditation. One thing that I did not say is, because we challenged everybody to, take a few moments and, meditate or be quiet. And, Riley, seems like you took that in and really tried to, really gave a good effort to do that. But listen, those of you that don't and decide not to, that's fine too. Like, sometimes everybody is on their own path. And so sometimes things need to happen, and people need to have experiences for them to go through, and for them to realize that maybe that's something that I should consider. Like, that's exactly what happened in my own path. I didn't wake up one day and said, oh, I should do this. Like, there were a series of events and experiences that occurred in my life and my experience that had ultimately led me to taking that action, making that choice, focusing on my feelings, and then trying to come to a place in which I was sitting down and silence my thoughts that I didn't want. And then ultimately, here I'm telling you a year later that is at least in my own, again, experience, is so powerful and so soothing and so, transformational in a sense, right? So, I wanted to share that, because it's, this is not like, a demand to anybody. Like, everybody does their own thing. Everybody's on their own path and does their own thing, and we want to be as inclusive and as open as possible, and not isolate anybody. And so, I just wanted to express that, because I felt like that was important to touch on.
Yeah, and we're also not here to say that stress and negative moods are bad. They are. We as humans have them for certain reasons. It's when you get overwhelmed by them and it's so easy these days. It's so easy to be overwhelmed, especially stress, so many distractions, negative moods. Everybody addicted to a 24-hour news cycle these days. If it bleeds, it leads. you can get so much bombarded with you, and the ways that we're built is to identify a problem and then try and solve it. But if you're constantly taking in all these problems that like you as a singular human being can't focus or can't fix, it's
Constant
going to have
reaction.
it. Yeah.
Constantly reacting. Right. And then and then it's like, and then to even be in a place in which you can reflect and like try and understand that, like that's a huge step in and of itself, like to be able to do that. Right. And and sometimes you don't have the ability to do that. And, unless you're by occasion, like listening to someone talk about it and say, oh, wow, maybe I should think like we're doing here, maybe I should think about that. But, and that's exactly correct. It's really, but once you start to do that, it starts to become something, and it takes a while, and it takes attention, it takes focus, which today with everything moving as quickly as it does, it's really challenging to do. Right. And if you think about today and what, like what our mindsets were even just a few years ago, like it has rapidly accelerated and accelerated and accelerated and come to the point in which, like, if we're not moving at the pace of the world, like we're behind. But is that really so? Right? Is that really so? And so, I it's kind of a teaser to what we're going to talk about today, but unintentionally, not scripted at all, just kind of, came out. But yeah, it's really a challenge. And, if you think about like what, I'm in business, I'm, and like as most of us are to make a living, of course, but like the reality of it is what's going to be something that's super valuable in the future, and really super valuable now. Like it's the ability to focus, the ability to like give your energy to something that you're really giving your entire attention to, and you're super present with, and you're engaged with, to understand, and then apply your thought, and then make choices, right? And like that's really challenging to do. And it's only going to get more challenging if 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 there isn't an opportunity to kind of like pivot pivot your attention, or focus, or consider something different, right? And so so yeah, more of a teaser into what we're going to talk about today. But Riley, I'll let you continue on our path of starters that we have, our appetizers of our series that we usually like to tee up.
So, I mean, Joe, should we talk about what's your little miracle of the week? What was something that caught your attention, that you were able to give your attention to, that really said, you know what, this is something that broke me out of a cycle, or made me maybe just pause and think for a sec?
I thought about this earlier this week, and one of the things that I had made a choice to do, or at least to try out, I said, let me try this out because it just feels right, was I wanted to like not eat meat for a while and see what that felt like, like not for any reason other, like people have asked me, friends have asked me, like, because I've always been a very I come from a long line of butchers, which I'm that's been the family business on my Italian side for generations. And it's been, a huge part of my life, and celebrating, obviously being very grateful to the animals that have, generously given up their flesh for our consumption and, satiation and pleasure. But it felt like an energy thing. It was like, I'm trying to expand my energy. I'm trying to get to a level of energy in which, I never thought was even a thing I would even think about. But here I am. And I said, let me now try this. And I've kind of lost the desire to have it. And so, and then I started thinking about different elements of it. And so I tried it, and then I wasn't really missing it. I used to get a quesadilla with pork belly, and it was, I talked about this on the show. It was the most amazing thing. But, I got a quesadilla with mushrooms, and you know what? I actually enjoyed it more. Like, funny enough, and it was so delicious. And so, I like had this fear, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, or I'm not going to be able to have this. And so it was kind of like overcoming a fear. And so I had made that choice to stop that. And of course I'm Italian, so I love pizza. I make pizza every week, and I make pasta all the time. So it was like, how hard could it be? Like, if you have to have like a food culture, and then I started eating like Madras lentils for the first time with rice, and I'm like, wow, this is actually really delicious. But the miracle of it is really came from a validation of, there's this new show out on Netflix in which the host he bicycled across the world. I can't recall his name right now, but he's been studying the blue zones, where there's hot spots around the globe in which there's centenarians, the people that have lived 100 and beyond. And he, a 4-part series or so, he goes around different places in Sardinia in Italy, and Okinawa in Japan, and some part of Costa Rica, and different elements of the world in which these people have such vitality, not just that they're living and surviving, but they actually have like a very thriving life, right? And so oddly enough, one of the common factors in every blue zone that he visited was a plant-based diet, which, I thought was, for me, incredibly validating. I'm like, all right, well, and I had made that choice before I knew that was something that was going to be in that documentary that I just happened to, was released on Netflix, new, that came out, a week or two after 2 weeks after I had made that choice. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's great. It seems like through a almost scientific process of evaluation and understanding, like that seems to be a key point and key attribute of these people that have lived so long, and yet there are some of these are 100 years old. They look like, there was a guy in Costa Rica. He's still cattling. He's jumping. He's 100 years old. He's jumping on a horse and running cattle and every single day. And this guy looks like he's 70 barely. And he's 100 years old, and they didn't believe him. They went down to the county. They went to all these places to kind of like prove that he wasn't telling the truth. And, because the guy showed him his driver's license and said, I don't believe you. And so he went through all these steps to validate that he was actually who he said he was, and he was actually of that age. But yeah, so that was my little miracle of it. And it was a validation miracle. It was like, all right, this choice that I had made, that just felt right, without any scientific thing, it was just a feeling, was then validated by what in human society we need a scientific validation typically to be able to even make a choice. And so that was my own little miracle. How about you, Riley?
So mine this week was going to be my sourdough baking. I've been doing sourdough for 6 or 7 years now. But then this morning I woke up and we watched the tail end of a reality TV series, my partner and I, called The Block. It's an Australian TV show where it airs we look forward to it every year. It airs 4 nights a week because all Australian reality TV is maximalist like that. They air so many times a week. It is crazy. It's Monday to Wednesday, and then Sunday are the reveals. So this isn't even important to the story. I don't know why I'm on this. Anyways, so it's 5 couples. They all get a house
Good
that they
context.
have to reno and build, yada, yada, yada. We were finishing up an episode from the night before, and they had the preview for what was going to come up next week on it. And the song that was playing in the background was Superman by Goldfinger. And that, for anybody, you probably don't recognize it right off the top of your head. But if you've ever played any of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video games,
yes,
it is one of the main ska songs that anytime it's like, so here I am doing everything I can. And maybe we can edit out me saying that and actually have a little
yeah, let's do
song.
that. Let's do that. Yeah, we can do that. We can drop that in.
Yeah. And so that instantaneously took me back to the days when I was, 10, 11 years old, playing these new Tony Hawk games.
Oh man,
and just getting all this music. The soundtrack to it has a permanent spot in my brain. And hearing that, and then this morning I just turned on the music to listen to for a while, and it's ska. It took me back to this time where before I really had a critical eye about things, and before you really have developed that sort of like, oh, this is not trending in the culture, so I should appreciate it less than other forms of art and things like that. And just 45 minutes of letting myself enjoy and letting the dopamine rush of nostalgia sort of come over me for these songs that really were so integral, it turns out, to my appreciation of Tony Hawk, to the point where now I'm looking into buying the remasters to play with my partner this evening, because it was just so much fun, and it took you right back to a very specific time where, like, you're young, but you're not so young that you've sort of forgotten what it was like to be that way. But it was before sort of like it was a time for me, like I probably saw The Matrix at around the same time and decided I know what good films are. This is the greatest film that's ever, and then I sort of went out of that, and then I came back to appreciate it again. Like it's that thing of like, if you appreciate something, if something feels good to you, don't try to ruin that for yourself. Let yourself
and sometimes remembering, having these things to recall those moments in which you were joyful, and and often those are when you're a child. Like those are some of the most joyful moments we have. To your point, Riley, we haven't developed a critical sense of application, which our reality, humanity has imposed upon us, right? And so like it time doesn't exist. It really, Einstein has many times proclaimed that. And the reality is why not let those be moments that you can reflect on and feel that feeling again? What a beautiful story to do that. And I don't know if I share, but I do sourdough too, Riley. So yes, I'm in the process of making my sourdough pizza for the week. So it's cooking in the fridge and it's rising overnight. I feed it every 2 weeks because it's got a life. Got to keep it alive. And I made pancakes with the discard, these sourdough 49er flapjacks, kind of a replication from the original Pancake House, with amazing pancakes, super thin and moist, and they're delicious. Anyways, I made it with we're watching Layla, a delightful 3-year-old friend of mine, and we made pancakes. So it gave me the opportunity to make pancakes, which I haven't done in a while with the discard. And so that was a fun thing that we did. Just building.
If you ever want a great lesson in how to let go of frustration, start baking sourdough, because you can do everything absolutely correctly. And then you put it into your Dutch oven, into the oven, and then you come back 15 minutes later to let out the steam and to have it really bake, and just see, oh, this is not going to be something I can eat. This is something I've spent 24 hours mixing it, shaping it, proofing it, bulk fermentation, did the folds, did everything right, got the rice flour to put in the Benetton so that it doesn't stick, flipped it out, scored it correctly, treated it better than I've treated anything else in my life for the last 24 hours. And then it just comes out and it's like, it's flat as a pancake.
What'd you do, Riley? Did you use active starter, or did you use did you forget the thing? What's going on, man?
That's the exciting thing about sourdoughs. You can do everything right, and sometimes it just doesn't turn out. And it's like, if you want a comparable experience for people out there, it's like playing a Dark Souls game where you are going to get beaten over the head so many times that you're just going to let go of the frustration of dying in that game. It's just a natural thing that happens. Sourdough is the Dark Souls of baking.
Well, everybody, you want a metaphor, like every individual life is like the individual character that exists in an RPG like Grand Theft Auto. Like, you have a world with everything happening around you and all of these things, and like you are literally just responsible for your own thing. Like that's exactly what life is. So, super interesting perspectives and elements of experience that exist in our lives, hey?
Yes. Which I guess it leads us into today's reading series, which leads us into, I believe, the theme of the episode, which is going to be the attention crisis.
The attention crisis?
You only get so much of an attention span. They call it an attention span for a reason every day. Those are moments of your life.
We all have
that
an
you're giving
attention span.
And we're losing it to things that we don't need to lose it to.
As we've alluded to prior in this episode.
So there's an article that's actually, as I looked more into it this morning, it's a reprint from a Big Think article about a year ago. An ancient technique can improve your attention span. The modern attention economy hijacks our ability to focus, but an ancient technique offers a means to get it back. And Joe, do you have any idea what that ancient technique might be?
No, I do not. It might be similar, but I don't know. Maybe it's meditation. Who knows? I haven't read the article. I saw the headline, and when Riley mentioned, maybe we should talk about this. I said, wow, what a perfect compliment to last week. As Riley had mentioned, our 7 myths of meditation, which requires attention. You're putting your attention on something for yourself and putting your attention on something new that you might not have tried before, and something that is different than what occurs in our typical outer experience of life, right? But I must give absolute gratitude and expression of thanks to Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who was a figure in my journey that really provided the science and the explanation of it all to help give me a foundation to believe in what is possible with things like meditation, which focus wasn't a thing I was thinking about. Attention wasn't a thing I was thinking about until he said, where you put your attention is where you put your energy. And when he said that, it was such a simple concept, but it was so powerful for me. So what's one of the first things I did after is reading that, and after him giving an example, one of the first things you should do is disconnect from news and social media and all. So I did it. I removed all. I didn't realize it actually took me weeks to remove the notifications on my phone. It's you remove all and then you get another one, and then you get, and they would come across, and once you totally forgot they even exist, they just come and they just continue flooding your attention. And so everything that comes into your focus is an attempt to rob your attention. And as this is talking about, stealing your attention to something to focus on, which is usually has a commercial benefit for someone, right? And that's usually what it's about, right? Instead of reflecting objectively from a place of holistic, what is this about for my life? Is this really going to benefit me?
So I think this article is great because it's sort of a bottom-up approach to something that, Joe, you say all the time, which is that a Joe Dispenza where you put your attention?
Yes,
where you direct your energy?
That is absolutely a quote from Joe Dispenza. Thank you, Dr. Joe Dispenza, inspiring millions across the earth.
So, Joe, I think you can whip that out so nonchalantly sometimes that maybe it's not even registering with folks, which is why I think this is a really good bottom-up approach to this idea. And so let's dig into a little bit of this article. Does this sound familiar? You can't focus. You're bored 1 minute, overwhelmed the next, and stressed either way. You make mistakes you shouldn't, and you dwell on them for hours. When you try to be productive, you can't go 5 minutes without checking your text, dreading some future engagement, or walking into another room to check on something. Neuroscientist Amisha Jha, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, we'll probably have her on the show at some point, opens her book, Peak Mind, with this vignette to illustrate an important truth. You're not alone. Most people can't go 3 minutes at work without being interrupted by a chatty colleague, and students cite the allure of social media and other digital distractions as major disruptors to their studies. She says, I've seen certain universal patterns in the way all of our brains function, both how powerfully they can focus and how extraordinarily vulnerable they are to distraction, no matter who you are or what you do. And I think that is something that, me, and I think a lot of folks still wanting that sort of scientific buy-in to the idea of mindfulness, is just think about, some of these mindfulness practices can sound a little woo-woo coming from one side, but on the other side of things, there are so many apps that are optimized, weaponized to grab your attention from you in the way that these mindfulness techniques are trying to help give you more awareness of, there are people who are already making use of all these same techniques and all these sort of ways that our brains have evolved, which is from if there's a threat, if there's a stressor, if there is some sort of negative emotion, it's a very immediate thing that needs my full attention so that I don't get eaten by the crocodile, so that, my kid doesn't get grabbed by, a hyena or something like that. It's all based on these things where there is an immediate threat and an immediate solution. So when I can make an app that dings you in a certain way that grabs your attention because it's either it's a threat, it's a stressor, or it's novel, or it's something about you. I've made a personalized app notification about you that it steals all your focus, because that's the way our brains have evolved to think, because it helps us survive. So yeah, the way that all these apps are designed are the exact things that we're talking about on the other side of it. But it's just weird, because the people who are making these apps are never going to tell you that they're doing it in this very, very sort of sneaky way to play upon ideas that you don't think about. So you gotta get metacognizant of where your attention is going.
Yeah, a macro, meta, however you want to say it, like zoom out, zoom out, and like, what is this? How is this something that could benefit or is affecting, me? To Riley, to your point, I remember my grandmother used to always say when I was younger, she would tell me the story about how her grandmother was like one of the telephone company's first customers. And I'm like, and she would call up and they give her the, number, and today it's 411, and they just connect her, so this is Mrs. Gambardella, and like they would know who she was because she was one of the first customers, and they would connect her, and that was her story. But I asked her about it. I said, what did you guys think about the telephone when you first got it? And she says, my father thought it was the most distracting thing, and he never wanted a telephone. So if he was alive today, what would he think? Right. It's like we're connected beyond, conception of what was even possible, much less, 5 years ago, much less 20 years ago. There were barely cell phones coming around 20 years ago in terms of what everybody had. A super small population of people had them. And as that's evolved, that's become something that has, as Riley, you just shared, like, has become something that saps our attention. And again, as we've mentioned several times, until someone maybe jolts us to say, hey, pay attention to this, maybe it's something that you might consider. It just passes us by, because we're racing. Human race, we're racing to something else. We're always racing, right? And so, can we slow down enough to get to the point in which we're actually focusing on ourself and focusing on our awareness and focusing on our attention, right? And going back to something I've said, previously many times, is like, how does life, in this, I'm trying to simplify the concept of life in what I'm about to say. Like, how does life begin? How do we like, life begins when there's a heartbeat, right? That's when we say life begins. When do we say life ends? When there's no heartbeat. What powers a heartbeat? Electricity. What is electricity? Is energy. Where you put your attention is where you put your energy. And so, like we're all energy. Everything around us is energy, and it's been proven by the science of quantum mechanics and quantum physics that, like, everything is light and everything is energy, and it's it's like hearing that and then trying to understand that are two different things. And so, like, but the reality is if you just simplify it into a very simple thing that every one of us have, we all have a heartbeat. We all have a heartbeat, right? If you're living and you're listening to this or watching this, you have a heartbeat, right? And so, like, that in itself is an electrical pulse, right? And so why is it not that our attention, which is possible because of our heartbeat, is energy in which we're giving out to something else. We're giving out to something else. But yet when we conserve that, what are we able to do when we're not giving it out to other things? Like, no one says you can focus when your attention is all over, right? No one says you can focus when your attention is all over. But when you stop giving your attention to things, you're conserving that. And when you're conserving that, you then have that to then project that into exactly what you want to give your focus to. Then you have focus. Then you have focus, because that's something that you're then, what did they say? In the zone. You're in the zone, and I'll refer back to sports casters, right? There's so many people watch sports, and it's such an engaging activity for humanity and people all over the world, right? And all the time they talk about, oh, like where's the momentum? Who has the energy? They were talking about tennis and commentating on the U.S. Open, where like they were talking about Coco Gauff, and that she worked extra hard in physical, so that because she knows that her energy is going to be sapped with emotionally and mentally when she's two giant swallowtail butterflies just came. Did you see that fly right over my head? Oh my God. I don't know. Hopefully it was in the shot. But but they all talk about energy, and it's something that we just like listen to and forget about. But do we actually take that and apply it in our life and say, wow, like what's really going on here? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's literally life is energy. And if you can try and understand, which I'm so grateful to have had experiences and made choices through, my own journey of self-realization, which any one of you can be on at any moment, is truly starts to be magical, because things start to happen and you start to experience things and look at things in a different way, in which, wow, I actually can focus on this now, and I'm not so distracted.
So this article continues in sort of like from the flip side of this. Depleted attention creates a mental fog. Hijacked attention manifests as anxiety and worry. Fragmented attention shatters our ability to focus. Disconnected attention keeps us detached from others. Each attentional affliction causes you to grow out of sync with what's happening around you, affecting what you think, how you feel, what you learn, how you react, and your relationship with others. In short, attention isn't just a matter of where your focus happens to be. It's an internal force that shapes how you encounter and experience your life in its entirety. So this article, one of the biggest things that it does, I think, to simplify a lot of the stuff that Joe's talking about, is it compares attention to currency. You can give it to others and you can receive it from people. Moments of attention are something you never get back. It's moments of your life that go by. And so you're spending each one of these moments in a certain way. And you really got to be cognizant of how you are spending it. And there are good things that you can spend your attention on. We're willing to give our attention to things for love, knowledge, entertainment, self-understanding, so many other things. You can pay attention to certain things and you can grow in so many different ways. It's a precious resource. And our ability to really focus on stuff, to get into that flow state, is an evolutionary coping mechanism to filter out all the information our brain is receiving all the time. Think about all the stuff that is just, when you're focusing on something, you are still getting so much external stimuli. Like if I think about it right now, I can hear my partner washing some dishes in the background. I can hear a clicking of a clock. I can hear a furnace turning on and off, or a forced air source system. Like there are so many different things around us that are going on. But when you focus, your brain has that amazing capacity to say, no, I just need to do this one thing right now. But that amazing, 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 amazing thing is easily distracted by anything novel, exciting, threatening, or self-related, because that's a survival technique. If you see anything that you have never seen before, if you've seen something that's super exciting, if you see something that's threatening, or if you see something that is directly related to you, your focus is able to go all the way completely to that, because in the wild, distractions save your life. So attention is easily broken as an evolutionary trait, but that mechanism is the root of the attention crisis that we find ourselves in today, Joe. I think you've certainly broken yourself completely out of it, or maybe not.
I mean, no, I wouldn't say. I mean, I feel like I'm on the path, and I've overcome so much to get to the place, but there's still moments for sure in which I'm like distracted by things, or I'm checking my email more than I need to, or that type of thing, but it has something that it is something that I've noticed that has become much more powerful, that I almost claim. Like I have the ability to focus more, and it's so exciting and so invigorating to a sense, right? Because you mentioned the Force. You mentioned, like, let the Force be with you, Star Wars, right? But like, we all have this force within us. Like we all have the ability to give attention to something. And thus we all have ability to give energy to something, right? As you mentioned with the currency metaphor, another, maybe not metaphor, but like example I'll give is, you think Michael Jordan would have achieved what he did if he wasn't able to focus on like being the absolute best basketball player on the planet? No, like that's exactly, if you read things that he has said, like that's all he was focused on, was being the very best. And that was it, like the very best that ever was. And that's what he became. And that was, a focus. That was a belief in himself. That was not allowing anybody that said anything to get to them. Right. And, I was I came across this 1982 interview with Paul McCartney over the last couple of days, where Bryant Gumbel was interviewing him. And this was in 1982. And Paul McCartney, said that he said, Bryant Gumbel asked him, are you insecure? And he says, as I lie through my teeth, no, I'm not insecure. But he said, yeah, I'm insecure. And Bryant Gumbel said, you're Paul McCartney. How could you be insecure? And I think that, like that, and one of the first things he said is he grew up, like, the first thing you do is you pick up the paper and you look at the stories and you read what people are talking about you. Like what's the first thing that he did there? He again, looking at this objectively, like he gave his attention to what someone else's opinion was, a human suggestion. Which, by the way, if the sooner anybody frees themselves of having any feeling or opinion of a human suggestion, that's one of the most freeing things you could ever experience, is starting to relieve yourselves of having that be something that affects you. But like he gave his attention to that, and what did that do? That immediately grabbed onto his attention, and that became the momentum that drove him to how he made decisions and how he thought and how he felt. Like, that's a very, real example from someone that I think most of us would say, how could Paul McCartney be insecure? Look at the infinite moments of joy that he created, and he developed with songs and with expressions of music and art that he created. That's, again, like literally infinite moments, billions, trillions, octillion moments of joy that he created for people on this planet. It's unbelievable. And for him to feel insecure, that's not something that anybody should have to experience. Much less someone that's created that much goodwill and positive energy for everybody to experience, right? And so it's a really in one sense you could say tragic, in another sense you could say it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity, right? Because again, if time isn't a thing, like all that matters is right now. Again, like another quote from Joe Dispenza: all potentials exist in the present moment, right? So if you're here, if you're present and you're engaged, what are you doing? You're focused. You're focused. If you're present and you're engaged, you're focused on right here and right now. You're not giving your attention to anything outside of that, right? And so it becomes this thing that, again, once you give the present moment attention, that gains momentum, and that becomes something that, but as soon as you start to deviate, and I'm the first to admit this happens to me too, still. It's something I'm working on. Like it gains a momentum, and I gotta look. I'm like, and I gotta and sometimes it takes time. It takes moments. It takes many moments for me to realize, and that I got stuck in that trench of momentum of giving my attention to something I knew was not serving me or serving what I was trying to achieve.
And this is one of the things that the article gets into, is you're never ever going to, it doesn't shy away from the fact that you're never ever going to escape all stressors in your life. Because stress, threats, negative moods are all things that we can use for motivation, as long as they don't overwhelm our attention.
Short term. Many people talked about, like, for short term, it's good because that stress happens and you overcome it and you feel a sense of accomplishment and achievement.
So there's a good form of stress called it's called eustress, or EU stress, which is low to medium levels of stress that motivate us to accomplish something. So think about that. Like, think about, Paul McCartney example. What was one of the things that motivated him and the Beatles? It was the Beach Boys. It was pet sounds. It was hearing these sounds that from a rival group over in the States, that previously people didn't think, like, the harmonies were so good, and that pushed them,
Push them. Yeah. And
to get better. But they didn't dwell on the fact that, that was better than them and there was nothing they could do about it. They say, okay, what is it that these people are doing? How can we get our harmonies to get like that?
talk about talked about technology. That happens to technology all the time. Like those are elements that push our collective consciousness to get to a place in which, okay, we know now, though, this is better, right? But originally the Beatles, like they just wanted to have fun. They just wanted to have joy. And that's why they went to Germany. They went to Germany to rock out in these places because they could, and they just wanted to have fun out of high school. Where can we go have fun? We got to go over here, fun, and then ultimately that became who they became. And then they got to a level and like, oh, wow, look at these people over here. It's your, the Beach Boys are doing that. Can we do that? Can we do that better? And, those were, so yes, it was a stressor, but it was also a motive. To your point, it was a motivator, and it was the ability to say, wow, can we do that? Can we do that better?
Turning that stress into a positive motivator is exactly what you have to do. But as the article goes on to say, stress has become de-stress. Negative moods are now really, really chronic, and threats especially are overrepresented in the news. And tech companies, news media, political players know how to weaponize these really, really effective attention grabbers. One of the things, the old moniker, if it bleeds, it leads. That sort of idea of like, you never hear about, what is it? Dog bites man is not a story, but man bites dog. That's front page news. So it talks about how our threat assessment mechanisms are meant to deal with immediate threats, crocodiles, wolves, enemies that can be solved in that moment. It isn't equipped to deal with things like nuclear war or climate change or pandemics, but those are still constantly things that we get bombarded with, whereas there's no solving for it. If you're feeling this way, you're not alone. You're not alone feeling helpless in this sort of thing. You just need to start giving it less and less attention. And it's not just those larger threats. We can feel it about our reputation, financial well-being, sense of justice. And so all these things that are going on in your head are huge debts to your attention currency. And if you start looking at it that way and knowing that a lot of these stressors are unavoidable, what we can do is start training ourselves. And this is the big point of the article. This is the ancient technique to improve your attention span. And it's meditation. It's meditation, Joe. It's always meditation. It is. It's 12 minutes. She did a study. She found that 12 minutes a day was all it took for people in her study to find benefits. Start by settling into your body. Notice yourself sitting and breathing. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Ask, what's most vividly tied to my breath? Is it the coolness of the air moving in and out of my nostrils, or are my shoulders moving up and down? Direct your focus on this sensation. If you notice your attention has wandered, just redirect it back to your breath and do that 12 minutes a day. And that's all it took for people to start expanding their attention spans and, having more of this currency, which, once you spend it, you don't get it back. You don't get those moments back. But if you can start using your focus like a muscle, then you can start directing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm creating more awareness of that. That's the expanding of the attention span from my interpretation. You have a better level of awareness, and then you're able to then harness that awareness into something, that's direct, and I'll use I mentioned light. I mentioned, everything is light and information. That, Joe Dispenza says that too, like, and it's within the mechanics of quantum physics. But like, how does that example convey to what we talked about here? Like, so what do you do if you focus light? Take a magnifying glass and you focus light from the sun. What do? Create fire, right? As that, like, you can't create that until you steady yourself. You steady the magnifying glass and you hold it and you give that focus to that, and you create the focus for the light to then create the spark that creates the fire. Like, you can't, and every moment we're creating sparks in our heart. Our heartbeat is the only place that iron is created in the universe is in stars and right here in our heartbeat. Funny enough, right? So, like, the reality is what's without is within, and what's within is without. And so, like, it's interesting to, if you've never heard those kind of those expressions or those metaphors or those types of things, it's oversimplification for sure, but like why can't it be that simple? Truly, like there's no, like, and you can spend lifetimes trying to prove it wrong, but why not try to just experience it and live it in a way and just see what happens? Like you literally, we're all in this race already. If we slow down and give ourselves, the time of day to devote to ourselves, like, why not? Right. And the reality too is every night we have to go to sleep. We have to sleep. Like, we're connecting, we're unconsciously connecting with the energy of our life when we sleep. Like, our bodies need that. If we don't sleep, like, we die. It doesn't happen. Right. So, like, to me, like, meditating is like consciously connecting with the energy of our life. Right. Meditation is being quiet, is stilling yourself, and trying to just be calm and focus on, if you say, what do you focus on in meditation? I would focus on your heart as a shining star. Like, that's a super simple but really, genuine, like, there's nothing bad about it. Like, it's a real thing, and it's something that, I wish I had when I started meditating, because I didn't know what to focus on. I didn't know what nothing was, and so it was really challenging, and it took me months and months and months to get to the place in which I said, oh, and I stumbled upon that. And I said, wow, that's really good. And then that had evolved and expanded and expanded and expanded. But like, it's, to me, meditation is like a conscious association with the energy of our life, just as we do when we sleep, however unconsciously. So why wouldn't it be a benefit while we're awake and conscious? As they say, like, you can only train your subconscious when you're conscious, right? And so, like, your subconscious will operate, but like, you have to consciously do it. So if you start to consciously apply that stillness and that calmness and that peacefulness, like, that will then start to manifest in your subconscious, which will gain momentum and give you the ability to then realize that and have that be. And, but if you start meditating today or tomorrow or a year from now or never, like, it's going to always be something that you're going to have to consciously give your attention to. And I'll, like, in my own experience, it was only everything in which I was like saying, in which it came to me like, oh, go meditate. Like, that's something good to do. Like, that happened like 3 to 6 months in, like, and you're like, how is that possible? Like, if you're giving it attention, it's because my entire life was focused on everything else. So you can't turn the momentum, in my case, 37 years in 2 days. Like, it takes a little bit, right? And so sometimes that's what it takes. And so, but again, keep giving your attention to what you want. And if we go to the law of attraction, of what you give is what you get, if you're giving your attention to stuff you don't want, you'll continue to get stuff you don't want. So if you give your attention to stuff you want, like peacefulness and calmness, then maybe you'll start to get that. At least that's what I've experienced. And it's been one of the most transformational realizations that I never even conceived of prior to a year ago. So amazing stuff.
Yeah. And if you can treat your attention, if you can treat your focus like the other things that you actually use your focus on to get better at, whether it's cooking, think about that first pizza, that first sourdough that you made compared to the one that you're able to do now. And the one that you're able to consistently keep doing, time after time, hopefully, if you're like me and 6 years into it.
You're on the right road, Riley. You're on the right road.
Yeah, it's a lot more consistent than it was the first few times that you try. And so it's that same sort of thing with your attention itself. It's going to be tougher at the beginning, but the more you work on it, the more attention you're going to have and the more resilient it's going to be to these sorts of things that are going to keep, because you're never going to not have, these days, unless you are really changing up your lifestyle. You're never not going to have a phone. You're never not going to have a job. You're never not going to have sort of a lot of these little stressors. You're never not going to have, a bunch of different little news feeds coming at you and things like that. You're never not going to have those these days. But what you are going to have is more mental armor to keep yourself sort of distracted or not distracted.
Yeah, there you go. Get distracted again. Well, and I'll say that, I think if we put it out there that you're never not, then you never will, right? And I think that, so, not to contradict you at all, but I think to just put another potential out there, like, if you take these little things out there, little noted, like, turn one app's notifications off, turn another, and do a little bit of that here and there, and and if you feel so compelled to be so connected with the news, then do it, but maybe do it less, and do it less frequently, or turn off the notifications and have it be something that you do, and or completely disconnect. Like, the world's going to keep spinning and the sun's going to keep rising. Like, the stars are going to keep shining and the flowers are going to keep blooming. So, you can, everybody's on their own path and everybody makes their own choices. So you can do whatever you want to do and have, and experiment, like everybody talks about engineering and experimenting and building, in these most successful organizations like, Apple and all they're constantly experimenting and testing and testing and testing and testing to try and do something better to make, more commercial like benefit for the organization. Why not try that in your life? Try different things and see. And then, just as you're giving yourself, 5-10 minutes a day to be in stillness and calmness, and potentially, if you want to call it meditation, meditate. Like, give yourself an opportunity to like test things out in your life, and not be, and sometimes, I'll be the first to admit, like, I had a fear of that. Like, that was a fear of mine. Like, I can't test things because like that's going to contradict, like that's going to implement unknowns into my life. But I need to know everything. And the more, and then I realized that was a limitation. We talked a lot about limitations in the last episode, and everything that creates a construct in which you're unable to, in which it makes you feel stuck. Anytime you feel stuck, or anytime you feel that you can't, that's a limitation. That is a limit. If you're trying to say, from last week, like where we talked about the 7 myths of meditation, like what, and I mentioned, I think I said limitations like 50 times if we had a counter on it, limitations. But like, how do you know what a limitation is? Anytime you feel stuck in any element of your life, or that thing could be constraining you from doing something else, or that thing is keeping you from all the different infinite avenues that exist. Like, that's a limitation, right? And sometimes we remove limitations and we kind of create a new one. But you know what? That new one is expanded and is beyond what that last one was. And then ultimately, it's possible to get to a place in which there's very little limitations, and those things that we accept as truth become part of our conscious awareness, become part of our reality, become part of our present moment. Like that's all life is your own consciousness and your own perception of things. And so, as I've said previously, your consciousness is your individualized energy, which beats your heart and powers your life, powering your present awareness, present moment, of your accepted truths, your accepted limitations. So that then becomes everything that you experience in every moment of reality in which you're breathing and your heart is beating, right? And so that's, again, an oversimplification, but thinking about that and then expanding that out, and then trying to see where are elements in my life in which I feel like I want to do something different or go beyond, or or not let that be something that controls me as much, and then little by little, as you start to overcome them, you'll realize how you can do that, and what's possible. And then again, you'll look back and you'll say, man, remember when I used to do that? Or that's another trick, like using moments as remember when. And I'm going to say, when you say to people, you're talking about this, we're going to remember this moment. And think about that at times that you've said that in your life. We're going to remember this moment as whatever, but and then in the future it's going to be so much better. And then you're when that so much better actually happens, you say, oh yeah, remember when we were talking about that? And planting those seeds to be something that you can then ground yourself to say, I put that in the ground. Now I'm going to water it and take care of it and make choices and, feel in a way in which I know that that's what I'm trying to achieve. So I need to feel that, because the feeling is, again, Joe Dispenza, again, huge on simple phrases, feeling is magnetic. Thoughts are electric and feelings are magnetic. So what you feel is what you attract. And so that means That's so it with a magnet, right? It attracts a metal, right? So like the thoughts are electric, and that's what's going to be attracted to the magnet. And so if you're whatever you feel, that's the thoughts you're attracting. So if you say we can't control your thoughts, yes, 100%. Admit that was 100% where I was a year ago. I never thought that was a thing. Never thought that was conceivable or possible. But I'm here to say a year later, after meditating for a year, that have I achieved it 100%? Absolutely not. But have I achieved it in a way in which it's way more beyond like what I ever thought was possible in terms of controlling that? Yes. And then I look back to the fundamentals of how that could be. Well, my feelings are much more positive. My feelings are more of what I want. And so the thoughts that are coming to me are more of what I want. It makes sense. It makes sense. But it's hard to admit within humanity, as humans, that like we're responsible because of our feelings of the thoughts that we're having. Right? It's easy to blame that on that's not possible. It's easy to say it's impossible. That's the easy thing, is say, oh, it's not possible. Of course, that's easy, right? We all do that, right? But the interesting path is to not let that be a limitation, and to feel differently, and to then start to reflect and observe, wow, I'm feeling differently. Are my thoughts different? Oh my God. Yes, actually. I don't have those things coming through my thoughts that used to come through, and thus ensues the cycle of life. The circle of life.
And don't sleep on any small changes that you can make. Even if your commitment to yourself is to be 1% more focused.
So true.
5% more focused. Maybe this is because I've been trying to organize a wedding. My partner has been trying to organize a wedding in
Give that
Las
credit.
Vegas.
Don't forget to give credit where it's due, Riley.
The difference, the house compared to a gambler on a lot of games has a 1% to 5% advantage over the average gambler, right? That's it. If I was going to go compete with somebody and they told me they were on something and they had a 1% advantage, I'd be like, that's nothing. I'll compete with them all day with a 1% advantage. But over time, that 1% advantage leads to the casinos making millions and millions of dollars. Like, it's the law of large numbers. If you apply a 1% little advantage to every interaction you have within a day, that's going to put you so much farther ahead in a year than if you were that you didn't put that little extra effort in.
Compound interest, compound attention, like you're getting that back 100%, Riley. I mean, and thank you for bringing that up, because sometimes we talk about these concepts, and, I'd be the first to admit, if I had not heard any of this and I'm hearing this, I'm like, man, that sounds so challenging. I don't want to do all that. Sounds like way too much work, but the reality is it takes one of those choices, one as you can use as a Kickstarter to your momentum. And then maybe a few days or weeks go by and you don't do that. And then you say, oh, wow, I remember I did that, and then that can be something that allows you to start the momentum. But every successful, every massive achievement that's ever occurred within anyone's life, or with any construct of, collective humanity, is a series of small choices. A series, like there's millions upon millions of small choices that exist in terms of building these massive, cities and buildings and technology and all of that. It's all a sum of an infinite number of small choices. And so every small choice counts. And yes, give yourself credit. Give yourself credit. Like you should celebrate those things, because what happens when you celebrate? You have a good feeling. What does that have then now the potential to do? To bring to you the thoughts that you want and the feelings. And then as soon as you feel that, whatever you feel is what you're going to attract. So the more you can feel good and feel the things that you want, wow, things start to happen in which you never thought were possible. It's a beautiful thing.
All right. Challenge for the week, Joe. What do we leave people with?
Celebrate a win. Celebrate a choice. celebrate and allow yourself to. Sometimes we feel like we're, being egotistical or whatever, and we can't celebrate because, but yes, like, do it. Get excited about it. There's no reason not to. The smallest choice, the smallest, feeling, wow, I did this differently today, or I did this for myself today, or I made a choice to help someone today, a kindness, a kindness choice, where I thought, or where I felt from my heart, these beautiful doves just fluttered in and landed upon my grass in front of me. We're going to have a camera one day in which you can see all the things that I comment on. But anyways, for now, yes, just celebrate a moment and a small choice in which it was a victory for you, or something that you did that made you feel good or made someone else feel good. And it's okay to celebrate that, because what happens when you celebrate it, because all we talked about was within energy, within our own construct and with our own mind. But, in the Basil story last week, Riley, you talked about giving your attention and energy to something in which you then created that nonsense and chaos for all the people you told about that thing, in which someone wronged you, in which if you had a different perspective, it would have been a totally different thing in which that energy was created, right? And so when you celebrate these things and you tell people, oh, wow, I did this, or, oh, I did this, and we had such a great interaction, with a kindness story. Those are things that people then go tell other people about. And then you're then a multiplier. You are the multiplier effect for goodness, instead of everything we don't want. So, give yourself a chance to celebrate, even just one thing during this, next week and a half, which, we're going to be on 10-day cycles for these episodes. So if you're tuning in, that's the cadence we're going to be following.
And let's hear about it down in the comments as well. Let's see some big wins. Let's see some small wins. Let's see some wins that are just unusual, something you maybe went a little outside your way to do.
Expand your comfort zone. That's it's easy to go. The momentum flows where it's easy. So it's easy to stay attached to the negative and all the stress, because that's what we're in all the time. It's a challenge to shift it. But ultimately, that becomes the easy path. It just takes effort, it takes focus, it takes attention. And once you do that, you start to and then you're an entirely different mindset, and you're an entirely different place, and you're doing things and experiencing things that you have always potentially dreamed, maybe not dreamed of since you were a child, or maybe never dreamed of, and then life becomes magical instead of stressful, and there will be occasions of stress and that, but as we've said, that has its benefits on occasion. So, choose a moment to celebrate and be happy. Is that it, Riley? We covered.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, have a magical week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and have an amazing day. See you later. Bye.